So would you like to learn to use a knife safely?
Not really.
Too bad.
Okay, so today apparently I'm going to learn how to use a knife properly. We have a lot of knives here. Am I
Yes.
going to learn all of them?
No, today we're gonna focus on one, the chef's knife. You can use the chef's knife in about 90% of the things that you're going to cut in the kitchen. So it's important that you have good skills there.
So some of the properties of the standard chef's knife that I'm seeing, this is 6 inches long.
Yes, this is a 6-inch chef's knife. They come in 6, 7, 8 inches commonly with various styles, but in general, we're looking for a curved blade that's easy to handle, it's got good balance here.
And what's the difference with this knife and these knives?
Okay, so this one is similar but has a very long blade that is good for carving meat. This one has a serrated edge rather than a smooth edge. That scalloped edge will help you saw through things like bread. And then this, of course, is just small. It's called a paring knife, and it's for detail work, peeling things, etc. We're not gonna use these today. We're gonna stick with our standard chef's knife. So let's clear some of these out of the way.
So before we get started, I should point out and say that many years ago, I had a small kitchen knife incident in which I cut my finger really bad.
It wasn't a small incident.
I had a major kitchen knife incident and it was bad. And so I have an aversion to kitchen knives. So I will begin sweating profusely here shortly.
So I have a chef's knife, you have a chef's knife. The first thing that we need to understand is that your knife should be sharp. A dull knife is more dangerous than a sharp knife. It seems counterintuitive, but if you're working with a dull blade, it will slip off of food, you'll have to press a lot harder to get through the food, and you run the risk of endangering your fingers. The next important thing to know is how to hold a knife. There are really 2 ways to hold a chef's knife. It comes down to preference. I'm sure if you were in culinary school, they'd have some very specific ideas for you, but there are 2 ways to hold the knife. Notice that your knife has a balancing point. It's somewhere in the middle here, and you need to have control of that knife. So one way to hold it would be to pinch your first finger and thumb back here at the blade where it meets the handle, and to wrap your fingers underneath, just like this. You have some good control here. If the balance feels a little different there, that's usually when I swap to just all 4 fingers around the blade and my thumb here holding the handle like so. You want to find the right balance so that you're easily rocking and the knife isn't wobbly in your hand. A way that I don't want you to use is to put your finger on top. It's common for people to want to put their finger on top. It actually loosens up your grip back here. Your fingers aren't where they should be for balance, and it's a little less stable to do it this way. This is not how we want to hold a knife.
Is this a death grip?
No, you don't need to hold on for dear life. Get a good grip so that it's not slipping around. If you find that your handle is slippery because you've been cutting something greasy or something, give it a clean. You shouldn't have white knuckles doing this. It should feel steady in your hand. Don't drop it, no loosey-goosey, but somewhere in the middle, nothing super tight. So now that you know how to hold the knife in one of 2 ways, the next step is the motion. The motion that you'll be making is a rocking and or sliding motion. So you can start tip forward and slide away from yourself, or you can draw the knife toward yourself like this. But either way, you're following the shape of the blade. It's curved for a reason, use that curve. Occasionally there will be times when you might come from above something and kind of come more straight down, but we really kind of want to avoid this motion. Number 1, it dulls the knife faster, and it also is just less stable to try to chop straight down with a knife that's clearly curved like that. So we want to use the shape of the blade. Now I'm going to give Doug a chance to practice with the rocking of the knife with a carrot. I would like you to cut the ends off of this carrot. Nice, good rocking motion. So you may have noticed you've got your knife in one hand, you've got a carrot ready, but now what do we do with this hand? We want to make sure that it's out of the way and safe so that we're not cutting it with the carrot, right?
Yeah.
So when you are cutting, you want your fingers of your holding hand to be curled under. So you want to hold them as curled back as possible. Ideally, your knife would be glued to your knuckles here. If your knife is moving with your knuckles, you can't cut your fingertips because they're out of the way. When we're working with beginning knife skills, rolling objects are not our friend. So I'm going to cut this a little shorter. So if you're going to get a flat edge on something by cutting it in half, you can turn it perpendicular to you, put your hand over the top like a little bridge, include that knife in there, and carefully slice in half. Now I can use my curled fingers and make little half moons here. I'm just rocking my knife back and forth over the top of this carrot.
I have a feeling this is one of those things that you make look easy, and then I'm gonna try it and I feel like a moron.
It definitely takes practice. I'm gonna move this short carrot out of the way and give you the longer one to practice with. So you've got plenty of space for your hand to hold the carrot.
Your fingers touch the knife?
Mm-hmm. So if your fingers are always in contact with the knife, your holding fingers move and the knife just moves with it. What I see are that your fingertips here are in danger.
I am sweating profusely.
Maybe we'll try something a little softer that you won't have to press so hard.
Good idea.
How about a cucumber? I'm gonna cut the ends off. I'm gonna cut a shorter piece. Now we have two nice flat edges. So what I'm gonna do is rock my knife and scooch my fingers. With the thicker cucumber, it is a little more challenging because you've gotta rock that knife up a little higher.
I don't understand.
Okay, so you still need a little more practice with carrots and cucumbers, something long that you can keep your fingers out of the way. But once you've mastered carrots and cucumbers, you can move on to something like a tomato, which is round, or a bell pepper, which is kind of an odd and round shape as well. So I'm gonna show how we can cut some of these things. By the way, when you're using your knife and it gets a little, carrot and cucumber on it, you can use a clean rag to wipe it clean. I want you to always make sure that you're starting from the dull side and reaching toward the sharp side. This way you won't slice any fingers or cut through your cloth. So for a bell pepper, I go ahead and use the chef's knife. You could use a paring knife for this. It's kind of what it's for, but I have this one out already. So I just go ahead and cut around the stem and I pull that out. And I'm going to go ahead and cut this in half. I want my fingers curled back. I'm not really concerned about making sure that my knuckles are in contact with the knife when I've got such a big piece that I'm working with, but I am going to make sure my fingers are curled and way out of the way to cut it in half. And then I can just scrape these membranes from the inside, the seeds and the membranes. Okay, so once the membranes and seeds have been removed, then we're ready to begin slicing. Now I like a fajita cut, so the thin slices like this, but we could also dice this. I'll start with slices. I'm gonna hold my knife in my hand properly. My hand is well out of the way over here, and I'm just going to cut strips like this. I'm gonna pull my knife toward me. Those would make good fajitas. Another thing that you could do is turn the bell pepper over. It gets a little wobbly, so you may wanna trim some pieces. This way we could cut almost like semicircles of bell pepper. So we'd kind of cut them this direction. Thick slices for the grill, thinner slices for sauteing. And so we get a slightly different shape that way. Would you like to try?
I haven't yet mastered the carrot or the cucumber.
So if you have some strips like this, either direction you've cut them and you want them in smaller dicing, then that's when I would carefully make sure my knife is on my knuckles, fingers curled back, thumb well out of the way, and I would slice the opposite direction for dicing. Now, a tomato can be a big challenge, especially for a new knife user. So a tomato, if we're going to make slices or dices, we need to make sure that we have our fingers out of the way. There is one sure thing that you can do to help yourself, and that is to give yourself a flat surface. Tomatoes require a small sawing motion, not a big sawing motion, but kind of a back and forth motion. Now that I have a flat surface, I can slice this direction.
Okay, so I think I have the basics here. So we want to make sure we hold with a steady but not overly firm grip, and don't put our fingers on the top. When we're cutting, we have our fingers back, make sure we rest it against our knuckle that's furthest forward, and rocking motion as we move.
Right, use the shape of the knife.
The shape of the knife. And then we want to start with firm things like carrots, cucumbers, things that will generally hold their shape. You may need to have someone cut them in half if you're just getting started. And then you can move on to things that are more squishy, like bell peppers, tomatoes. But keep practicing at each level just before you move on to the next one, because it does kind of get a little bit harder.
How about you practice on some more carrot?
Okay.
If you like this and you want to learn some more skills or science about cooking, hit like, subscribe, and we'll see you next time.
Literally cut myself.
Are you kidding?
So I'm not supposed to hold the cucumber.
You are holding the cucumber, yes, absolutely.
I'm not touching the cucumber right now.
Well, you should be.
Okay. My knuckles don't line up like your knuckles do.
You're right.
Anyone can cook.
Except Doug, who has weird knuckles.